A very, very good afternoon to you back in studio. We are coming to you live from the Garden Inn Hotel here at Hilton along Mombasa Road. We are following up on the ongoing intensive probe by the Energy Committee of the National Assembly, who are inquiring on the escalating cost of power in the country. They've had previous sittings in the past 2 weeks. They've been following up on this, where they've been meeting different IPPs and trying to interrogate the power purchase agreements. And there were some of key issues that have been raised by the committee. I'm here with the Energy Committee chairperson, Vincent Kawaya, who I'll be engaging here on some of the key highlights that have come up from these sessions. Thank you very much, Honorable Vincent Kawaya. You're live on KBC Channel 1. Please kindly bring us up to speed with what has been going on in these sessions.
So we have, for the last several weeks now, been conducting an inquiry onto the escalating cost of power. The House resolved through a motion that was tabled by one of the honorable members, Jane Kagiri, on the cost of power, that the Energy Committee conducts an inquiry and reports to the House within 120 days. And this subject is, of course, of interest to all Kenyans. We identified different stakeholders to engage them on stakeholder public participation. And the teams we've been engaging are those that either contribute to the escalating cost of power, or those who have information about what can be done to bring down the cost, as well as the victims, the Kenyans who are affected by the high cost of power. You understand that compared to our neighbors, our cost of power is high. If you look at Egypt, if you look at Ethiopia and others, you really can't compare. And that only serves to chase away investors, because nobody is going to put up industries that consume a lot of power and buy them at 4, 5, 6 times what others can offer. And we've met so many stakeholders today. We have met the Auditor General, and why we need the Auditor General is so that we can also have valid data on what the auditors have been able to establish, why we believe some of the gaps or leakages that the Auditor General has pointed out could be because either way these costs are normally transferred to Kenyans. Then those gaps identified by the Auditor General are of interest to us, because it means then if we tame them, then automatically then that pass-through cost is which is normally transferred to the customer is controlled. And interestingly, one of the items picked up by the Auditor General is that pass-through cost. Whenever there are challenges, whenever there are losses within Kenya Power which cannot be attributed to the consumer, those pass-through costs are transferred to the consumer, and there is basically no control on the pass-through costs. There is simply no monitoring. The Auditor General has also clearly stated that they've pointed out an audit issue around how the power purchase agreements are signed. The Auditor General expresses concern on the discrepancies. You find that certain PPAs for the same technology, for the same location, then people get different power purchase agreements. And this power purchase agreement, the discrepancies are huge. Some are getting paid 130 Kenya shillings per kilowatt hour, while others are getting only 6 shillings per kilowatt hour for the same power supply to Kenyans. Then you ask yourself, why such a huge discrepancy?
Yes. Honorable Chair, allow me to interrupt you briefly, please. Some of the recommendations that have been outlined by the Auditor General is probably having these IPPs disbanded. For example, you do away with the IPPs charging more and have IPPs that have that allow that will agree with the government to charge at a lower cost. What do you make of that? And what are some of the possible outcomes should you decide to probably terminate the contracts of the IPPs that do not collaborate with you?
We are looking at different proposals. We have different stakeholders who've given different proposals, and we are considering many proposals. One of those proposals is a possibility of terminating some of those contracts. The other possibilities, there are also those IPPs that are willing to renegotiate. The proposals or power purchase agreements are not necessarily terminated and procedurally. The purpose of the Auditor General in pointing out some of the discrepancies is so that even also us as a committee, we can start asking ourselves, were there malpractices in signing of some of these contracts? So that it is no longer an issue that can be debated in court. If, for instance, there's an element of criminality in signing some of these skewed agreements, then this cannot be legally binding, because the moment we establish an element of malpractice, then we have an exit strategy around that malpractice, so that an agreement that was done through a malpractice. Again, it's also important to note that some of the issues are glaring. And I want to give you an example, for instance, that has been pointed out by the Auditor General, which we also have pointed out as a committee. Look at a company like Electrocana, for instance, that is supplying power to Kenyans. The contract is simply outrageous. It states that force, if whether you need it or not. If you don't take it, you have still to pay them. If you take it, you pay them. At that particular point in time, there are cheaper sources of power from geothermal, and you are now told you cannot buy cheaper. You cannot buy power at 6 US cents, because there is another one at 16, which you signed you must buy whatever it takes. Then you ask yourself, was this contract, which is on basis of what we call take or pay, was there an element of malpractice by the person responsible for signing such an agreement? You look at that same agreement, it says that the distributor of the power is obligated to pay VAT, taxes, on behalf of the developer or the generator. Then who is the distributor? The distributor doesn't pay. He transfers this cost to the common person. Then again, now you look at elements of malpractice, elements of criminality in signing some of those contracts. And we are saying that any contract which we can be able to establish malpractice, then that is not a legally binding contract.
Yes, Honorable Chair, and then you talked about the malpractices in the signing of the contracts, but again, you'll find that some of these contracts are probably, they have conflicts of interest. Maybe members from maybe your committee or members of the House are part of this, they're shareholders, or they're sort of involved in that. How are you going to deal with issues of conflict of interest?
There is no single member of the committee, I think, that can need to be withdrawn, who has any particular interest. But we have asked for documents, CR12 documents from the Registrar of Companies. We know some of the people have been hiding through the names of other companies. We will, where a CR12 document as a shareholder who is listed as another company, we have also been very clear. The Registrar of Companies must provide the CR12s of those. We are going to dig to the whole matter and establish the correct shareholding of this particular IPP companies. And it is possible, and we believe where we sit as a committee, the only reason why some of the contracts would have been formulated the way they were formulated and be signed is because there was a conflict of interest. Whether the conflict of interest included them being part of the shareholders or getting some lump sum money at that particular point in time, but it is clear that there has to have been some element of canvassing, there has to be an element of criminality, conflict of interest in the way these contracts have been formulated. We will even look.
Trevor Trevor Ngendo there engaging the Honorable Vincent Kawaya, who is the chair of the Energy Committee at the National Assembly in regards to the high cost of energy in the country. And I've been able to pick up a number of items that even the Auditor General has been able to pick up in regards to discrepancies in the power purchase agreement, or if you want PPAs, and also gaps also have been identified in the sector, which the committee has agreed on the way forward in regards to sealing those so that the high cost does not cascade down to mwananchi. You will be back with a more comprehensive report, including when we should expect cheaper energy cost in the country.